I was a senior in high school when I competed in gymnastics at the Arnolds. I actually don't really remember how well I did. I'm probably somewhere in the middle. I was never like a super stellar gymnast, but I was decent. Yeah, I started in fitness in 2003 as obviously an amateur in the NPC. I had my best friend who was a professional dancer for the Detroit Pistons. She was on the automotion dance team. She choreographed my routine in her backyard. Yeah, things have come a long way since then. I've always competed in the NPC and then got my professional status in fitness and in figure by doing fitness and figure at the same national show and crossing over, winning both categories and the overall in both. So I was the first person in history and forever to be the only one to do that, winning professional status in both categories at the same show. But I won my show, I won it. But I was the only person in my class, so we can just keep that between us. My first professional win was in figure in 2009 at the New York Pro. And my first figure Olympia win was that same year in 2009. I won every competition I did from 2009 through 2012. With one second place. So yeah, I kind of went back and forth a lot. So I won in 2009, 2010 I got second, 2011 I got first again, 2012 I got second, 2013 and 14 I won, and then 15, 16, 17 was still top 5. But yeah, it was a very competitive time when you'd win the world title and then you would lose it the next year. And I think during those moments of loss, I had this surge of just fire to win that back. And I think it was Aaron Stern. We went back and forth between first and second place for 4 years straight. So yeah, I definitely think her and I, it was the only real like battle from year to year that I had in my career. We were cordial when we saw each other at events, but we weren't like chit-chatting or texting each other. Competing is really hard. And the challenge of it is why people continue doing it year after year, because they want to keep getting better than what they were last year or last show. How can they continue to improve? And I think it's fascinating that through nutrition and training, you can completely transform the way that your body looks. And when you can do that and you can start to see progress from year to year and show to show, it's addicting. And I think that's really the biggest reason why I kept going, because I felt like, hey, you know what? I'm good at this and I want to see how far I can actually go with it. There was a time probably in the middle of my career where I was thinking in my head, I've been doing this for a long time. I don't know if I can keep doing this, but and then I won. So then it becomes part of your business too. And I think that's a huge motivator to keep yourself going on those days where you do kind of feel like, is this something I want to keep going, keep doing? So, I mean, it's just being real. So, well, in 2010, I was going through a divorce at the same time I was training for the Olympia. So I think that mindset had something definitely to do with just the overall stress and the way my body was responding to the prep. But in 2012, I think my body was tired. I think my head was a little bit tired from not taking any breaks for a very long time. I have a younger sister and we are polar opposites. She's very artsy and crafty and creative, and I have always been kind of the tomboy into, riding bikes, climbing trees, and not interested in Barbie dolls at all. So I think I've always had that competitive drive. I don't know exactly where it comes from. My dad was an athlete growing up. My mom was in the band, so she wasn't really into sports. Yeah, I don't know. I think my mom has an entrepreneurial spirit, and I think that independence and drive to be successful through business is in a lot of ways similar to sport. You're willing to do whatever it takes to be successful in your craft, whether that is in business or in sport. And I believe that played a big role. I've had a series of injuries in my career. I tore my left hamstring, had 2 knee surgeries on my left leg. I I've had a series of back injuries over the last decade, primarily just bulging and herniations and lower lumbar. But other than that, no broken bones other than a thumb, riding a bike, not even in having anything to do with gymnastics or bodybuilding. But I think the one that took the longest recovery was my back. It's something that I've just had to make sure that I didn't push through, because it could be a much longer lasting injury than it ended up being. So yeah, I just had to modify and really listen to my body and make mobility and stretching and the recovery aspect a little bit more of a priority than I had been. So when I had my knee surgeries, I was in high school. I was 15, 16. And part of the rehab going through those injuries was strength training. So I knew that in order for me to get back to what I was doing prior to, I needed to stay strong. And I knew that it would help speed up the recovery and get me back into sport soon, versus just completely letting everything go and getting weaker and making the rehab even longer. And that inspired me to actually get involved more in the weightlifting aspect. And the same thing really with my back. I did train through it. I was just super smart and obviously modified where I needed to. As a gymnast, knew I wasn't going to do collegiate gymnastics because of the knee injury, and that was during the recruiting years. And to be quite honest, I just really didn't have interest in doing another 4 years of gymnastics. So I knew previous gymnasts who had gone into fitness, which it was only fitness and bodybuilding when I started. There was no figure, bikini, physique. So I thought, if I have the gymnastics background and I could get my body to look like that, this could be something that I could do to fuel my competitive drive that I wouldn't have with gymnastics anymore. And that was really what led me in that direction. It was more, what is the next challenge for me to accomplish? And I knew I was going to go in the health field. So if I could get my body to look that way, then maybe it would help me with my business too. When you are chasing the title, you are completely enveloped in everything that you personally need to do in order to get that done. And it doesn't really matter what anyone else is doing. It's almost as if things kind of flow really easily. And even though it's not easy, you are just so in your own world. During those moments of loss, I had this surge of just fire to win that back. And the first time I won it back, it was awesome. And I think it's harder sometimes being at the top because you have no one to chase and everyone is chasing you. So you start to second guess every move you make because you don't want to misstep. I have to do the exact same thing I did last time in order to win. And if I do anything different, it may not result in the same thing. And in 2012, I think it kind of got in my head a little bit, and my body was not responding as well as it had been in the past. And I knew I needed to change. I needed a complete overhaul, mindset, physical. So I started working with a new coach, did a completely different protocol with my training and nutrition, and then ended up looking, in my opinion, I think the best I had ever looked in my career in 2013 to win it back for the second time, which had never been done before. I think the first time that I had the title, I took that for granted and didn't really know how to handle being the champion and keeping that title. I am not ever gonna say I was lazy, because I don't believe I ever was lazy, but I think I mean, it's a much different mindset when you are chasing that title versus trying to defend it. But when I lost it again, and then I won it back, the second time, I did not want to let anything slip through the cracks. I wanted to make sure I was gonna do everything possible not to lose that title again. So that was my mindset going into 2014, and I definitely think that had, that played a role in why I won 2 times in a row. Looking back, would never miss a session of training. I would never miss a cardio session. If there were 5 minutes left, I'd fit it in later. If I couldn't get it in, every meal was measured out. I wasn't going off the plan. When you're not feeling super strong or super energetic, when you have the mindset of not letting anything get past that, you almost take it to the next level. But if your body and mind aren't in the ideal place, that level might be a little bit lower. And I think that's the best way to describe it. I was training 6 days a week, and as the show would get closer, I would do cardio fasted in the morning and oftentimes after my last meal. So I was the one that had to pull out all the stops to get my body fat as low as I needed to in order to be competitive. So yeah, it was 2-3 hours a day, 6 days a week, 1 day off. It's pretty intense. During peak competition prep, diet is pretty boring. I definitely have an old school approach. Lean proteins at each meal, complex carbs coming from rice, primarily rice and oats, sweet potato, green veggies, limited sugars, no alcohol, things like that. So you have to remember, I competed for nearly 2 decades. So it's 2 decades of extreme dieting, and really that's what's required in order to get your body to that degree of body fat for the stage. So the habits that you develop over the years of doing extreme dieting is something that you do have to kind of rework in your head, all the rules and things that you told yourself you weren't allowed to do, you now actually are allowed to do, and it's a really weird, I still catch myself sometimes thinking, I actually can have that, whereas before it would be this rule where it was not allowed. And if you did, it almost felt like, oh my gosh, I better eat it all right now or else I don't know when the next time I'm gonna be able to have that is. So yeah, there was a lot more highs and lows in my competitive years, whereas now I pretty much stay the same all year round, it's a good feeling to have that freedom. Obviously not at the conditioning I was when I stepped on stage, but I'm probably the healthiest I've been in my entire adult life, so. The first year I retired, I decided I was gonna do something completely out of my comfort zone to challenge myself, and I did a triathlon. I got 3rd place in my triathlon. To be a good coach, you need to be able to be flexible with your programming. I definitely have a different approach to nutrition now. For the most part, I eat anywhere from 4 to 6 times a day. With creating my own products, I could do what I wanted, and also to help people along their journey. I mean, it's a really awesome feeling to be able to have a voice that people trust